My name is Madison Blake, I'm 30 years old, and if you asked anyone around me, they'd say I had it all together. A rising PR strategist in New York City, running high-profile campaigns for million-dollar clients, always in control, always prepared. That's the version of me people saw in polished boardrooms and carefully curated LinkedIn updates. But on one ordinary Tuesday morning, in a luxury hotel ballroom filled with executives, my carefully constructed world shattered. One second I was clicking through slides, explaining brand demographics with confidence. The next, the faces around me began to blur like melted wax. Pain exploded behind my eye, a stabbing white, hot poker that stole my breath. My hands clutched at the table for balance, but my legs gave out. And then, darkness. When I woke, it wasn't applause or laughter I heard, but the sterile beeping of hospital machines. Fluorescent lights, IV tubes, the unmistakable smell of antiseptic. A doctor leaned over me, clipboard in hand, speaking words that hit harder than the pain in my skull. "We called your emergency contacts, your parents. They said they'd come," his voice faltered. "But they haven't arrived." In that instant, something inside me cracked. Not just because I had collapsed, not just because the doctors suspected something far more serious than exhaustion, but because the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally weren't there. And maybe you know what that feels like. Maybe you've spent your whole life being the second choice, the afterthought, the one who never quite measured up. If you've ever looked around a room and realized that the people you expected to stand beside you had already walked away, then you'll understand my story. Because this isn't just about a health crisis. It's about a lifetime of being invisible in my own family, a lifetime of chasing approval that never came. It's about what happens when the mask slips, the body collapses, and the truth can't be ignored anymore. So stay with me, because what began with abandonment in a hospital room became the turning point of my entire life, a journey that redefined what family truly means. I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, in a house that looked like it had been pulled straight from a magazine cover. White shutters, neatly trimmed hedges, a classic front porch with 2 rocking chairs no one ever really sat in. Every Christmas, our home lit up with perfectly lined strands of twinkling lights and a flawless tree positioned right in front of the big bay window. And of course, our family of 4 posed for the annual holiday photo, smiling wide, looking picture perfect. To anyone passing by, we were the embodiment of the American dream. But the truth inside those walls was nothing like the facade. My father, Thomas Blake, was a well-known attorney. He wore tailored suits even on weekends, carried himself with the air of a man always in control, measured words, stern eyes, never a hair out of place. My mother, Elaine, taught literature at the local college. Students adored her patience, humor, and sharp wit. And then there was Christopher, my older brother by 3 years. In everyone's eyes, he was the golden child. Teachers praised him, coaches bragged about him, relatives held him up as the example. Harvard admit, tennis team captain, a Wall Street internship before graduation. He was the pride of the family. My parents showcased him like a trophy, proof that we were the model family. And me, I was just the shadow, the background character in Christopher's spotlight. I wasn't a failure. I earned strong grades, thrived in debate club, won art awards, kept a near, perfect GPA. But none of it ever mattered. My achievements were footnotes, overshadowed by the bold headlines of Christopher's success. I can still hear my father's voice. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" Sometimes he didn't even bother to hide the disappointment. For Christopher, first place was expected. For me, second place meant nothing. Even my mother, so gentle with her students, was different with me. She'd tell my teachers, right in front of me, "Madison just needs to try harder." Her brother never had these problems. As if I wasn't even in the room. Invisible, that was my entire childhood. I'll never forget my 16th birthday. I imagined a family dinner, maybe a cake Mom baked herself. Instead, my parents drove 6 hours to make it to Christopher's tennis tournament. They left me with a store, bought cake, and a hurried note. "We'll celebrate next weekend." That weekend never came. By the time graduation rolled around, I didn't expect anything anymore. My parents showed up, cameras flashing, smiles wide as I walked across the stage. But the dinner afterward, it wasn't about me. It was about Christopher's engagement to his fiancée, a wealthy med student from a prestigious family. My acceptance to New York University was brushed aside with a half-hearted nod. "It's a good school," my father said, his tone making clear what he didn't need to "it wasn't Harvard." That night, I finally understood. I had to leave. I couldn't keep clawing for scraps of attention that would never come. If Greenwich couldn't see me, then I'd disappear from it entirely. New York wasn't just a choice for education. It was a choice for survival. A chance to put miles between me and the white, painted fences, the endless comparisons, the suffocating weight of never being enough. I boarded the train to Manhattan believing distance would free me from that shadow. What I didn't realize was that some shadows follow you, and one day they would bring me to my knees. New York was nothing like Greenwich. The city was loud, restless, and never slept. No one cared who your parents were or what kind of past you carried. Here, the only question was simple: can you get the job done? For me, that was freedom. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could define myself without living under Christopher's shadow. My years at NYU blurred together in a mix of classes and side hustles. I studied communications, juggled part-time jobs, and scraped together rent for a tiny Brooklyn apartment I shared with 3 roommates. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every good grade, every word of praise from a professor, every article I managed to get published, it made me feel visible. For once, I wasn't invisible. After graduation, I landed a spot at Madison Square Group, a mid-sized PR firm with big ambitions. I started on small accounts, but soon I was trusted with million-dollar campaigns. I learned how to handle the media, spin a crisis, convince impossible clients with just a few words and a practiced smile. My boss loved to introduce me. "This is Madison, she never drops the ball." And he was right, I never let myself slip. At work, I became the indispensable one. First in, last out, always answering emails at midnight, always jumping on 6 a.m. calls. I was the definition of dedication, and also the perfect excuse to pile more on my shoulders. My boss would joke in meetings, "Madison doesn't have a husband or kids, so she's always available." Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But inside, it stung. To them, I wasn't a person. I was a machine. The headaches started about a year after my promotion. At first, I chalked it up to stress or lack of sleep. More coffee, a couple painkillers, and I kept pushing. But then came the dizziness. Sometimes I stood up too fast, and the whole room spun. The fatigue never lifted. No matter how much I slept, I woke up exhausted. My friends noticed before I did. Olivia, a younger coworker who had joined the firm recently, looked at me across the lunch table one afternoon and said flat out, "When was the last time you took a real vacation? You look burned out." I forced a smile. "I'm fine, just busy." "I'll be okay." But deep down, I knew I was pushing myself past the edge. Then came the biggest opportunity of my career, North Star Athletic, a national sports brand looking for a rebrand, a multi-million-dollar account, and my boss handed me the lead. "If you nail this," he said, "the director's chair is yours." My heart pounded. Director, a team of my own, a paycheck that no one could dismiss. Proof I was more than Christopher's little sister. I didn't think about the risk. I only thought, this is my chance. For 3 weeks straight, I worked 16-hour days. Meals at my desk, naps with my head on the keyboard. My eyes burned from the glow of my laptop. The headaches became brutal, painkillers useless. My vision blurred, hands shook over the keys. But I brushed it aside. Just finish this project. Just cross the finish line. Then I'd be fine. The morning of the presentation, I woke with the worst headache of my life. My skull felt locked in a vise, every flicker of light stabbing behind my eyes. I doubled my meds, stood under scalding water to shock myself awake, and pulled on my charcoal gray suit, the one I called my armor. In the mirror, a pale face with dark circles stared back. I forced a smile, whispered to my reflection, "You've got this, Madison. You've got this." But deep down, I knew. This time, I wasn't fine. That morning, the hotel hosting the conference buzzed with powerful faces. The air was cold from the blasting AC, golden lights glared overhead, and the sharp click of heels on marble floors echoed like a drumbeat. It felt less like a business meeting and more like stepping onto a stage. I took a deep breath, straightened the collar of my silk blouse, and gripped the folder I'd spent weeks perfecting. This was it, the moment of truth, the North Star athletic account, my ticket to the director's chair. At exactly 10 a.m., I stepped up to the podium, dozens of eyes fixed on me. Behind me, the screen lit up with charts, graphs, and images I had designed down to the pixel. I smiled, forcing my voice steady. As you can see in the demographic analysis. But I never finished the sentence. The room tilted violently. Faces below blurred together, melting like wax in the sun. I clutched the edge of the table to stay upright, but the stabbing pain behind my right eye ripped through my skull like a white, hot blade. My voice fractured, then vanished. The next thing I knew, I was falling, plunging straight into darkness. The moments after were fragments. Someone shouting my name, chairs scraping, feet pounding across the marble floor, a flash of strobing emergency lights, sirens, a medic's urgent voice, blood pressures dropping. Move. I wanted to answer, to say I was fine, but my lips refused to form the words. When I finally surfaced, I was surrounded by sterile white light, machines beeping steadily around me. An IV line taped to my arm, my throat dry as sand. A nurse smiled in relief. Welcome back. You gave everyone quite a scare. Minutes later, a doctor walked in, mid-40s, kind eyes but a firm tone. She introduced herself as Dr. Chen. You collapsed from exhaustion and severe dehydration, she said. But we're concerned there may be something deeper going on. We'll need to run more tests. I nodded weakly. But my first thought wasn't about my health. It was about work. How soon can I be discharged? I still have a presentation to finish. Dr. Chen cut me off, her voice sharp. Absolutely not. Your body is screaming at you, Madison. This time you have to listen. Then she paused, adding more gently. What contacted your emergency contacts, your parents? They said they'd come. But they haven't shown up. The words landed like ice water. I shouldn't have been surprised, but the ache still hit hard, like a hand tightening around my chest. My mind whispered, of course. They never show up. But my heart still held on to a foolish hope that maybe this time, when it truly mattered, they would. That afternoon, Olivia, my new coworker, barely 3 months at the firm, walked in carrying an oversized tote bag. Inside were clothes, a toothbrush, even the book from my nightstand. I used the spare key you gave me. I hope that's okay, she said, sheepish but determined. I thought you'd want some familiar things. My vision blurred again, but not from dizziness this time. From tears. A near stranger brought me comfort. My own family, nowhere to be found. On my second day in the hospital, my phone finally buzzed. My heart leapt, maybe Mom. But no, just social media notifications. My hand shook as I opened them. Christopher had posted photos from the Hamptons. My parents, my brother, his wife, their kids, all of them smiling in matching T-shirts that read, Family Weekend. Finally, some peace. And the caption cut like a knife. No drama. Just joy? I froze. The drama was me. While I lay in a hospital bed, waiting on test results for headaches that might be a brain tumor, my family was eating lobster and drinking wine on the beach, celebrating the peace of my absence. And in that moment, I understood something crystal clear. If even this couldn't bring them to me, nothing ever would. On my third morning in the hospital, I woke with a crushing weight in my head. The pain wasn't as violent as the day I collapsed, but it lingered, like a dull blade grinding against my brain. I lay still, listening to the steady beep of machines, and thought, what if I don't wake up tomorrow? The door swung open. Dr. Chen walked in, with another physician, a tall, middle-aged Asian man with thin, rimmed glasses. This is Dr. Patel, she said. He's a neurologist. We've reviewed your scans, and we need to speak frankly. My body tensed. My heart pounded. My ears roared. Dr. Patel sat beside my bed, pulled up a tablet, and turned the screen toward me. An MRI image glowed, a stark white mass in my right frontal lobe. His voice was calm, deliberate. We found a tumor, most likely a meningioma, typically benign. The good news is it's not cancerous, but the size and location are pressing hard against your brain. It explains your headaches, blurred vision, fainting spells. The best option is surgery to remove it. The words sank like ice water. A brain tumor. The phrase drilled into me, hollowing everything inside. I wanted to scream, to cry, but my body only trembled. Finally, I whispered, "Brain surgery. Does that mean I could die?" Dr. Chen rested a hand on my shoulder. Every surgery carries risk. But the success rate here is very high. What's important is not waiting. Delays will only make things worse. I nodded mechanically, but my mind free fell into emptiness. After they left, I stared at the ceiling, numb. My thoughts drifted to my family. My parents, my brother, probably still sipping wine in the Hamptons. I let out a bitter laugh. All I ever wanted was a hug, a phone call, one word of comfort. And even standing at the edge of life and death, that silence remained. That night, during the evening shift, a new nurse walked in. Carla. Early 40s. Curly hair pulled back, eyes bright, smile warm. Within minutes of casual conversation, the heaviness eased a little. When I finally broke down, confessing the diagnosis, she didn't rush. She just handed me a tissue and said quietly, 10 years ago, I heard almost the same words. Stage 3 breast cancer. 2 weeks later, my husband walked out, said he couldn't handle it. I thought I wouldn't survive, but I did, because I wasn't alone. I had neighbors, coworkers, even other patients. Family isn't just blood. Family is who stays when others leave. Her words stunned me. And in that moment, something inside cracked open. A door I hadn't known existed. The next day, Olivia, my coworker I'd only known a few months, showed up again. She carried a tote bag stuffed with pajamas, a phone charger, even the paperback I'd left on my nightstand. "I figured you'd want a piece of home," she said, pulling up a chair. She stayed, telling stories, making me laugh until my stomach hurt. And I realized while the people I called family vanished, near strangers had stepped in. Olivia. Carla. Even patients from nearby rooms, smiling at me in the mornings, sharing their own battles. That night, for the first time since collapsing, I didn't feel alone. I understood something profound: blood doesn't define family. Presence does. And sometimes, the people who start out as strangers become the very ones you can lean on. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. From the moment Dr. Chen gave me the date, time itself seemed to freeze. Every night I lay awake, staring at the dim reflection of the ceiling lights, whispering to myself, "What if I don't wake up afterward?" My body shook at the thought of strangers cutting into my skull. I had never known fear like this. Fear of the pain. Fear of the darkness. Fear that when I opened my eyes again, the world would no longer be the same. Through those long nights, Carla, the night nurse, always stopped by. She'd tell small stories: her 3 cats at home, her sister's disastrous hair dye, an elderly patient she once cared for. Her laughter didn't erase my dread, but it kept the room from feeling so cold. Olivia was different. She didn't just bring clothes and toiletries. She stayed for hours. She'd play chess, watch movies, or just sit in silence so I wouldn't feel empty. One afternoon, she held up the surgery consent form, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "They need someone to sign as your emergency contact. If you want, put my name. I'll be your family in that box." My throat tightened. "Olivia, we've only known each other a few months. You don't have to?" She cut me off. "I don't have to. I want to. Someone has to be here. Clearly. Your blood family won't. So let me." That was the first time I broke down in front of her. Not from fear, but from something I hadn't felt in years, the feeling of being chosen. Someone with no obligation cared enough to stand beside me. The night before surgery, Carla walked in carrying a folded piece of paper. She handed it to me. It was a list of other patients on the floor, people who had survived brain surgery or who were also fighting alone. "If you feel lonely, visit them," she said. "They know this fear better than anyone." I hesitated, then slipped into my robe and shuffled down the hall. Each open door was a new story. A retired teacher recovering well after surgery, a college student disowned by his parents for being gay, now battling leukemia, an elderly woman whose children lived across the country, quietly waiting for strength to return. I sat and listened. And I realized I wasn't the only one afraid. Others had faced death, and yet they still smiled. They still hoped. By the time I returned to my room, something inside me had eased. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the hospital window. Olivia was already there, holding a bag of breakfast and a nervous smile. "Big day," she said softly. "But you're not alone." Carla came in right after, resting a hand on my shoulder. "You'll be okay. Trust us. We're your family now." When the orderlies wheeled my bed down the hallway, my heart pounded in my chest. I looked at Olivia, then Carla. They each gripped my hand tight, and in that moment I knew. I was no longer alone. They wheeled me into the operating room in the early morning, sunlight still pale behind the frosted hospital windows. The room was blindingly bright, cold, heavy with the sharp sting of disinfectant. I heard machines clicking, metal instruments clinking, footsteps moving in sync, like an orchestra in which I was the unwilling centerpiece. Dr. Paddle, the surgeon who would hold the scalpel, leaned over me, his eyes steady, calm. "Madison, the surgery will take about 5 hours. We'll do everything we can. Take a deep breath. Trust us." A nurse lowered the anesthesia mask over my face. I started counting down in my head, 10, 9, 8, and then the darkness swallowed everything. Waking up after brain surgery isn't like the movies. There was no dramatic snap into clarity. Just a slow, heavy climb out of a deep fog. At first I heard only the hiss of the ventilator, the steady beep of the monitor. Then, faintly, a voice. "Familiar? Madison? Can you hear me?" I fought to open my eyes, lids heavy as stone. The world blurred, then slowly sharpened. Olivia's face came into view. Exhausted, but smiling with quiet relief. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw desert dry. She quickly pressed an ice chip to my lips. "Easy. You're okay. The tumor's gone. The doctor said it was a success." Tears slid down my face, not from pain, but from sheer relief. I was alive, still here. The first day after surgery was a haze, a dull ache in my skull, the shuffle of nurses' shoes, needles, medication. I drifted in and out, but every time I surfaced, someone was there. Sometimes Olivia, sometimes Carla. They took turns keeping watch, as if they were sisters, as if we were bound by blood. On the second day, Dr. Patel stopped by. His eyes were encouraging. "The tumor was benign. We removed it completely. You'll need time to heal, but the outlook is excellent." His words brought a rush of gratitude so strong it stole my breath. Weeks of fear had finally cracked open into hope. Yet almost immediately, another ache cut deeper. My family still hadn't come. Not a call. Not a message. Nothing. That afternoon, my phone buzzed nonstop. My heart jumped. Maybe mom, maybe dad. But no, just social media notifications. And then I saw it. Christopher had posted a series of family photos from an amusement park in Boston. My parents, my brother, his wife, their kids, all in matching shirts that read, "Family first." A bitter laugh caught in my throat. Family first. But I had never been part of what came first. Olivia sat beside me, glanced at the screen, then looked me straight in the eye. "You don't have to read that. They may never change. But look around. Who's been here? Who held your hand before you went under?" I turned my head. Carla had just walked in, carrying a small bouquet from a patient down the hall. She set it gently on the table and smiled. "We're your family. No birth certificate, no bloodline needed. Just presence." This time, my tears weren't for grief. They were for gratitude. In the shadow of pain, I had found a light. A family, not inherited, but chosen. 3 days after the surgery, when the pain in my head finally eased enough for me to sit up, my phone began to buzz nonstop. Dozens of missed calls. Dad, Mom, even Christopher. My heart thudded. After days of silence, they had finally remembered me. But then I saw the message attached. "Call back immediately. Grandpa Howard's in the hospital. He's asking for you." The words pierced me. Grandpa Howard, the only one in my family who had ever truly cared. He was the one who taught me how to fish at the lake in Vermont. The one who showed up at my high school art show when no one else bothered. The one who called on holidays just to ask, "Are you doing okay?" The thought of him lying weak in a hospital bed, calling my name, broke me. And yet, anger burned just as fiercely. Where had they been when I was the one lying on a hospital table? I pressed call. My father answered almost immediately, his voice frantic. "Madison?" Finally. "Why haven't you answered? We've been calling for days." I drew a breath, forcing my voice steady. "Because I've been in the hospital, Dad. I just had brain surgery. Silence. Then his voice, shaken. What? Why didn't you tell us? I let out a sharp, bitter laugh that made the stitches in my skull ache. Didn't tell you. The hospital called. More than once. You knew I was admitted, and you still chose the Hamptons. You even posted photos with the caption, "No drama." The drama, Dad, that was me. Wasn't it? My mother's voice cut in, trembling. Madison, don't say that. We didn't realize it was that serious. I cut her off. Not that serious. I collapsed in the middle of a presentation. The doctors found a brain tumor. I signed the consent papers for surgery alone. Do you know who signed as my emergency contact? Olivia, a coworker I've known for 3 months. And where was my real family? On the beach, drinking wine, calling it joy without drama. There was shuffling on the other end. Then Christopher's voice, confident as always. Maddie, you're overreacting. None of us knew it was that bad. If we had, I would have driven up immediately. I shut my eyes, fighting the surge of fury. Christopher, I've heard that my whole life. If I had known. But you never asked. Never once did you stop to see me. I brought home grades, and all I heard was, why not like your brother? I won awards, and you reminded me you'd won bigger ones. On my 16th birthday, Mom and Dad drove 6 hours to your tournament and left me with a grocery store cake. And now, even with my life on the line, the answer is still, if I had known. Silence. 3 voices muted, had nothing left to say. Finally, my father exhaled, voice low. We were wrong, Madison. We were sorry. I froze. The first apology I had ever heard from him. And instead of relief, all I felt was emptiness. Years of craving that sentence, only to find it now, too little, too late. My voice came out calm, almost detached. Sorry doesn't erase the years you left me behind. It doesn't erase the nights I was sick, the awards I accepted in silence, the birthdays you forgot. I don't need hollow words. I needed presence. And that's something I've never had. The line went quiet. I knew they were scrambling, searching for something else to say. But I didn't give them the chance. I'll call back to speak with Grandpa. As for you, keep your apologies. If you truly want to change, prove it. Actions, not words. Right now, I already have a family here. The people who chose to stay when I was at my weakest. And I hung up. A wave of relief rushed through me. Like setting down a weight I'd carried for decades. I had spoken every truth. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of them anymore. That night, after hanging up on my parents, I lay still in the hospital bed, my heart pounding as if I had just weathered a storm. For years I had waited for the chance to finally say everything I'd kept inside. And once it was out, I felt a strange, weightless relief. But peace never lasts long. My phone buzzed again. This time the screen read Dad FaceTime. I hesitated, then accepted. The first image that appeared was my grandfather Howard's thin, fragile face. He lay propped on a hospital bed, IV in his arm, eyes tired but lighting up when he saw me. Katie Girl, his old nickname for me, his voice shaky, but still warm. I finally get to see you. My throat closed. Grandpa, I'm so sorry. I can't fly right now. I'm still recovering from surgery. The doctors said it isn't safe. He gave a faint smile. Don't apologize, sweetheart. I know. I'm just proud you're still here, still fighting. I heard about the brain tumor. Tears blurred my vision. Yes, but the surgery worked. The doctor said I'll be okay. He nodded, eyes soft. Then he motioned for my father to move the phone aside. The frame shifted until it was just the two of us. His voice dropped to a whisper. The cabin at Crystal Lake, it's yours. The papers are signed. It belongs to you, Madison. I froze. Grandpa, why me? I was never the one this family chose. He shook his head, that old stubborn fire sparking in his eyes. Exactly. That cabin was always your sanctuary, wasn't it? Early mornings fishing. Afternoons reading on the porch. Nights listening to the loons call across the water. That's where you've always been yourself, and it should belong to you, not Christopher. Not anyone else. I broke down sobbing. I don't deserve it. You deserve it more than anyone, he whispered. And one more thing. His breath caught, ragged. Stop running, Katie girl. All your life, you've kept running. From Greenwich, from your parents, from the hurt. But running doesn't heal you. Face them. Speak your truth. Make them hear you. Even if they never change. Grandpa, they'll never listen. I whispered. His eyes, gentle but firm, held mine. Maybe not. But the biggest change has to start with you. You don't need their approval to exist. You need to believe you're enough. The lake cabin. Use it as a new beginning. A place to build a real family, the ones who choose to stay. I nodded, unable to answer. He closed his eyes, smiling faintly. I'm tired now. But remember this? Katie girl, I've always seen you. I've always been proud of you. The screen shifted slightly as my father steadied the phone. My grandfather's face faded, but his words burned inside me like a steady flame. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept deeply, without nightmares. In my dreams, I heard the lap of water against the shore, smelled the damp pine of the Crystal Lake cabin. I knew then it would be my beginning. Not a place to hide, but a place to stand firm, to face life, to live in the worth I had always carried. 2 weeks after surgery, when the stitches on my head had started to heal and my strength returned, Dr. Peidel finally cleared me for a short trip to Boston. Grandpa was still in the ICU, and I knew he didn't have much time left. Olivia insisted on coming along, not just to help me physically, but to be my shield. That morning, I sat in a wheelchair rolling down the long hallway of Massachusetts General. My heart hammered, not only from worry for Grandpa, but from knowing my parents and Christopher would be there. And this time, I wouldn't hide. When the door opened, the first thing I saw was Grandpa Howard. Frail, but his eyes still lit up, still warm. He gave me the faintest smile. Katie girl, you finally made it home. I moved to his bedside, took his thin hand in mine. That same hand that once guided mine as I tied a fishing line now trembled, but still carried warmth. But only seconds later, tension thickened the room. My father stood, my mother at his side, Christopher leaning against the wall, irritation written all over his face. My father started, Madison, you should have told us sooner. Grandpa cut him off, his voice weak but sharp as steel. Franklin, sit down. No excuses. Today, everything needs to be said. All of it. Silence fell. I felt his eyes urging me forward. For the first time, I didn't look away. I turned to my parents and brother. My whole life, I've fought just to be seen. I studied hard, joined clubs, won awards. But it was never enough. Why? Because there was always Christopher. I was always compared, always second place. My mother's eyes welled. We never meant to, Madison. We love you. I cut in, my voice shaking but firm. Love. Is it love to forget my birthday? To turn my graduation dinner into a celebration for Christopher's engagement? To vacation at the Hamptons while I collapsed at a conference and went into brain surgery alone? If that's love, then I don't need it. Christopher frowned. You've always been dramatic. No family's perfect. I locked eyes with him. True. No one's perfect. But there are moments you don't get back. Did you ever stop to wonder how it felt when Mom and Dad drove 6 hours to your tennis match and left me with a grocery store cake? Did you care how I felt when they spent my graduation dinner praising you, while my acceptance letter sat ignored? You never did. My voice cracked, but Grandpa's hand squeezed mine, steadying me. For the first time, my father lowered his head, his voice uncertain. I was wrong. I didn't realize how deeply I hurt you. My mother broke down in tears. Christopher stood silent, his arrogance stripped away. Grandpa's voice, raspy but resolute, cut through the air. You need to understand. Love isn't words. It's presence. It's action. Madison has lived her life invisible in her own family. If you don't change, you will lose her forever. The silence that followed was suffocating. I drew a long breath, meeting their eyes one last time. I don't need promises anymore. If you love me, prove it. If not, I already have a family. The ones who stayed when I was at my weakest. I leaned down, pressed Grandpa's hand, whispered, I said it, Grandpa, I'm not running anymore. He smiled faintly, his eyes closing, peaceful, as if he had just witnessed the ending he'd always hoped for. After days in Boston, I returned to New York for follow-up care. But inside, I already knew. I would go to the cabin at Crystal Lake, the place Grandpa had left for me. It wasn't just property. It was legacy. His last message to me, don't run anymore. Face life. Live for yourself. One crisp morning in early fall, Olivia and I drove 4 hours north to Vermont. The winding roads cut through rows of blazing red maples, leaves like fire against the sky. Cool wind rushed through the windows as we climbed higher into the hills. And when the car finally stopped in front of the cabin, my heart clenched. It looked exactly as I remembered. Weathered brown shingles, a porch dusted with time, and the faint scent of pine resin drifting on the breeze. Inside, I ran my hand across the wooden walls. There, faint pencil marks I'd scrawled as a child at 8 years old. Everything was the same, preserved as if Grandpa had been waiting for me to return. The first few days, I did little but rest. The incision still throbbed, headaches came and went, but the clean air and silence here healed me in ways no hospital could. In the mornings, I sat on the porch, watching mist curl across the water, listening to the haunting cry of loons. By evening, Olivia cooked simple meals, and we laughed over small, silly stories until the cabin echoed with warmth. Not long after, Carla, the night shift nurse, came to visit. She carried a basket of fruit and cards from patients I'd met in the hospital halls. One card read, "Family isn't always blood. Thank you for sharing your story." I cried as I read their words. From these visits, a circle began to form around me. A chosen family. Olivia, with her wit and loyalty. Carla, like an older sister, steady with encouragement. And friends from the support group. People who had walked through their own shadows, and now chose to share their light. That night, we lit a fire on the porch. I stared into the flames, and something inside me loosened. For years, I had lived chained to my parents' approval. I thought my worth depended on their nod, their validation. But here, with laughter around the fire, I finally understood I didn't have to prove myself anymore. Grandpa's words echoed. "Don't run anymore." He was right. I would no longer abandon myself just because others refused to love me properly. Beneath the canopy of stars, I whispered into the night, "Thank you, Grandpa. I found my family, not the one I was born into, but the one I've chosen." And for the first time in years, I felt true peace. 1 month after leaving the hospital, my strength had returned. The scar on my head was still visible, a thin line across my scalp, but I wore it like a badge, a marker of the life I had stepped into. The cabin at Crystal Lake had become my refuge, a place where I learned to slow down, to listen to myself. But I knew there was still one thing left undone, facing my family. One last time, on a quiet weekend afternoon, Olivia drove with me back to Boston. My parents had called, Christopher had texted, promising, "Things will be different." I didn't fully believe them, but I didn't want to carry anger forever. I wanted closure, on my own terms. The old house in the suburbs looked exactly the same, white fence, geraniums on the porch, a living room lined with family photos. Most of them, of course, were of Christopher and his kids. I took a breath and stepped inside. My father rose to greet me, his face visibly aged in just a few months. My mother burst into tears. Christopher lingered by the wall, his usual confidence gone. I sat down, clasped my hands, and spoke first. "I didn't come here to hear another apology," I said evenly. "I've heard enough. What I need is change." My father swallowed, his voice low. "I've thought a lot about what you said at the hospital. I never realized how invisible you felt. And I'm ashamed." I held his gaze. "Shame doesn't change anything. Action does. I don't want to be recognized as Christopher's sister. I want to be seen as me. I don't want empty promises. I need presence." My mother took my hand, tears streaming down her face. "I'll try, Madison. I may not get it perfect, but I want to learn how to be your mother again." Christopher, silent until then, finally spoke. "I'm sorry too. I got used to being the one in the spotlight, and I never saw how much it cost you. I want to start over." I sighed. For years, I had longed to hear those words. Now that I did, I didn't cry. I simply felt calm. "I don't expect miracles overnight," I told them. "I just need you to understand this. I already have a family. People who stood by me when I was at my weakest. Olivia, Carla, patients I met in the hospital. They showed me what love really looks like. If you want to stay in my life, you'll need to learn how to love me the same way. If you can't, I'll still be okay." Silence filled the room. And then, from the armchair, Grandpa Howard, frail but smiling, nodded. That's the Madison I always believed in. Brave enough to stand tall. Brave enough to choose. I turned to him, eyes misting. You taught me the most important lesson: family isn't just blood. Family is who stays. I'll never forget that. That evening, as we left the house, I felt no more urge to run. I walked away lighter, as if laying down a burden I had carried for a lifetime. Beside me, Olivia smiled. You just closed a big door. Now it's time to open a new one. I breathed in, staring at the sunset sky. You're right. This isn't about running anymore. This is about choosing. Choosing freedom, choosing peace, choosing a family I build for myself. And in that moment I knew I was finally free.